I'd like to get your thoughts on balancing the concerns that some constituents have brought up and lawmakers about calling this voter suppression compared to concerns about simply, the cheating in our elections.
Sure. And let me just say, the House had a very thorough hearing last week. It started at 8 a.m., finished at, I believe, 5:30 the next morning, and constituents' voices were heard on House Bill 6. And my office worked very closely with Chairman Kane on his bill, and I feel like it is a bill that addresses voter integrity. We saw a lot of irregularities last cycle, not necessarily fraud, but irregularities where certain counties kind of made up their own election law on a whim. And the legislature decides the election code for the state of Texas and for all 254 counties. So that's what House Bill 6 seeks to address. And for those who have concerns about suppression, we will, when that bill gets to the House floor, we will have that debate, and it'll be evident or it will not be evident where there's voter suppression. I don't see voter suppression in House Bill 6. And I think the debate will bear that.
Courting business has been a huge part of the Texas model, right? And it's been a point of pride for y'all, to make sure that businesses, that you're luring businesses to Texas to prosper. Do you have any worry that, taking these stances against Major League Baseball, some of the airlines, that Texas would then be turning away economic opportunities?
No, I don't see it that way, and I have the phone numbers of several of those individuals, and I haven't had an opportunity to call them today, but I am going to call them today, and I'm going to ask them to pull up House Bill 6 on their computer screen and point to me where in that bill they see voter suppression. I think they are pulling Texas into a national discussion where we don't belong, and I have not read the Senate version of SB 7. Right now we're focusing on the House package of House Bill 6, and I'm going to ask them respectfully, because I do want their presence in the state of Texas. I do want them offering economic opportunity for my constituents and all Texans, but I want them to be very respectful of the process and go through the legislation line by line and show me where there's voter suppression in House Bill 6.
Some of these wedge issues, elections, abortion, guns, what concerns do you have about these the measures of critical legislation, the energy grid stuff, the healthcare legislation. What concerns do you have that those will get in the way of those high priority bills that you've talked about this entire session?
Sure, and there's time to do all this, actually. And there's 149 members who have their own legislative package that they're very, very passionate about. They ran for election on a certain topic, and they want to have that on the House floor. Whether it's an issue that, a gun rights issue or a pro-life bill, or whether it's an electrical grid issue, because there are some communities that were severely impacted by Uri, right? We will have ample time. I know it doesn't seem that way, but the House is right on schedule. We've done the work that we've done every session. The same amount of bills filed, same amount of bills referred, and we're moving legislation off the House floor at the same pace we've done in previous sessions. So, will it all make it to the finish line? Of course not. There's 4,000 bills, and some of them are great ideas, some of them are bad ideas, depending on who you are. But it's incumbent upon the member to get those votes out of committee onto the House floor and get 50% plus one and move it over to the Senate. So, I don't think there's a lack of oxygen in the building to accomplish what members want to accomplish if they're willing to put in the work.
Let's pivot a little bit to some of these bills that we've been talking about, specifically the George Floyd Act. That was a major priority for a lot of members and constituents. Before the storm hit, and the storm kind of knocked some of the wind out of that sail a little bit. But do you worry that that's been pushed to the side?
I will give Chairman White all the credit in the world. He ran a terrific hearing a week or so ago. One of the bills was the George Floyd Act, and it went on for hours, and it was very emotional, and he handled it very well. And Ms. Thompson laid her bill out very well. I think there's opportunities for compromise on how we address police misconduct, how we address their training. We have multiple bills that deal with making certain that we don't rehire individuals who've been terminated for bad conduct and get them out of the pipeline for law enforcement. So I know Chairman White's working with Ms. Thompson on that bill, and I think there's plenty of time for that piece of legislation as well. Again, we can get a lot done in the House in a short period of time. Things start moving really quick about this time of year, and so I still think there's plenty of runway left for bills of that nature.
What's the status of the energy bills right now?
Our first round have already gone over to the Senate. We have more of a single shot approach to the energy crisis we had last month. And we have another round coming up very soon that deal with the financing aspect of it. And so we will pass those over to the Senate hopefully as well. The Senate has SB 3, which I believe we referred today to committee, or we will refer very soon. That's more of an omnibus approach from the Senate. And they also have single shot bills as well dealing with it. So by May, we'll sort through what's passed each chamber, and we'll come to agreement with what needs to become law. We'll have those negotiations, but I think the Senate and the House are very close on a solution.
Have any of your goals shifted since we talked at the start of this session? I mean, have any of your goals shifted at all now that we're a little more than halfway through here?
Well, every week something new happens, it seems like, here in Texas, and we always have to pivot a little bit and take into consideration whatever the new topic of the day is, because we're only in here for 140 days every other year. So, of course, we always have to pivot, and that's the nature of the House specifically. But, in the beginning, it was passing a comprehensive budget that members can be proud of, and we're there. The economy's improved, and we're able to fully fund public education and hold them harmless, and we've done a good job with that, I believe. And coming out of COVID, I think we've addressed a lot of the issues that were raised during the pandemic from a government standpoint. We have of course, the securitization and the weatherization of our electrical grid that, again, we're working on right now as we speak. And so, something may come up in the next week or two that we'll address before sine die, but I feel really good about where we are. Of course, redistricting will probably not occur. This session will be a special session in the fall, and we're pretty well aware of that early on in session. So there's a constitutional duty that we must address here in the Texas House and Senate. So we'll come back in the fall and address that.
I know this week there is legislation relating to the expansion of medical marijuana access for cancer patients and some others as part of that state program. Can you walk me through the pros and cons in your mind of expanding medical marijuana for Texans?
Well, I haven't read the legislation. I don't know how far it goes or how far it doesn't go. I can tell you I've supported such legislation in the past as a House member when I had a vote on the House floor, and I don't have a House vote anymore other than the budget. Traditionally, the Speaker only votes on one bill, and this year will be SB 1, the budget. But as having family members who've dealt with chronic illnesses, I see no reason why not to give a greater access to a pharmaceutical. I will call it a pharmaceutical. It's a naturally grown pharmaceutical. But whether or not the House has full support of that, I don't know. We've done small steps each session I've been here on medicinal marijuana, and that we may take another small step this time. I'm not certain.
Real quick on the border. Is the Texas investment, whether that's man and woman power, whether that's finances, enough right now?
It's a great question. We spend north of $800 million every session on border security when it's not the state's responsibility. It's a federal responsibility. And it's frustrating as someone who's been a part of the appropriation process to see so many state dollars go to a federal program, in my opinion. We're limited on what we can do on the border, but fighting cartels, fighting human trafficking is obviously a number one goal for the House, and we've always supported border security. I wish we had better communication with the federal government on what their long-term plan is. We're apprehending record amount of migrants coming into Texas each week. It gets higher and higher, and April and May are typically the largest months for apprehensions. And so if you look at 2 weeks ago, it was 21,000. A week ago it was 27,000. And by the estimates of law enforcement, that's typically 25% of what's actually crossing. So you could make the argument that the last couple of weeks there's been 200,000 individuals coming into Texas, and we're only getting about a quarter of them. So yes, it's very concerning. It's a humanitarian crisis is what it is. And it stresses our resources along our border from the Rio Grande Valley all the way up to Del Rio, our healthcare, our public education, our criminal justice system. It stresses all of it, and it's very expensive, and it's, quite frankly, again, a humanitarian crisis that, Texas would like better direction from our federal government.
Are there any other priorities or any other bills that are keenly on your radar as we head into the home stretch? Anything else you'd like to get done that maybe the ball isn't rolling as much as you'd like it to?
No, I think the chairs have done an excellent job of moving legislation out that are priority legislation. Quite often in the House, we have hearings on bills just as a courtesy to other members, and we realized with COVID and the 10 days or so we lost with the storm Uri, that we don't have that luxury, and that we need to move priority legislation as soon as possible. And so I'm really pleased with the way our chairs have handled the workload and the way the members have responded on the House floor. So things are moving exactly how we would want it, as best they can, and it's been a group effort, and I'm really proud of the House.
How's everything going in the district?
Going well. It's not hurricane season, so it's exceptionally well right now. Again, this is, like I was saying earlier, this is the best time of the year in Southeast Texas. It's cool and enjoyable outside, so I'm looking forward to get back home.
And in the district, I know that you were there, I guess, I don't know if that was last week or 2 weeks ago, but talking about rural broadband, and I know that legislation is slated to move through the House this week. Can you talk about the not only just the investment, but I know one of the concerns is in setting up some of these plans, the broadband office and some of the infrastructure, going to be a couple of years down the road before some Texans will even see the impact of the legislation that's being moved through. What can you say to folks about that in-between time and how the lack of infrastructure is being addressed until it can kind of finish,
Sure.
Until it can get across the line?
And House Bill 5 will be on the floor tomorrow in the Texas House, and that is our big rural broadband push. Exceptional piece of legislation. It is agnostic to technology. It allows for instance, if you're in a very rural area, perhaps you use satellite instead of pole attachments. So maybe that time frame is much shorter. Maybe it's not 2 years. Maybe it's almost immediate. So each community will be mapped out and decide which best technology works for that area. And I think there are federal dollars that came in late last year. We have a program called SURF that we're going to roll out as part of the utility package, but it deals with all utilities, both broadband and electrical modernization and winterization. And here in the House, our idea is to take $2 billion from the rainy day fund and spend it on infrastructure. And that would be a huge shot in the arm for broadband deployment. And some of the infrastructure is there. I mean, if you look at electrical lines and you can add a fiber line to that, it could be relatively quick. And so I hope it's not 2 years. This is vital to Texas. It works well with telemedicine and telehealth, which has been a huge asset in COVID and really driven down the costs of healthcare and access to healthcare. So I am hopeful that it will be sooner rather than later. But this is like building highways. Sometimes it takes a little more time.
Senate sent over the budget. Do you think that when you kick it back over, it'll look like it does right now?
We always have that debate. We have our own ideas on the budget. We're as close as I've ever seen. The introduced budgets were very, very close to each other. I was very impressed with the work that both Senate Finance and House Appropriations did in the interim with the introduced budgets. And of course, we've worked through the different priorities. The economy has improved. I think there's better opportunities for more resources to go where we need them the most. I like infrastructure projects. We fully funded public ed on both sides. We totally agree with that. So I think we're going to be much closer than we have in the past. But we also have budget night here in the House where there'll be hundreds of amendments filed, and people will be very passionate about their amendments. And so it may change a little bit on budget night, and then we go to conference and we hash out the details.